Welcome to the LSI Behind the Wind podcast. I'm Sean Slatter. For over 30 years, I've dedicated my life to the science of business development. I've seen the impact of our work, which has evolved into economic development and now social impact. One of the themes that we've had in building these podcasts over the last 6 months has been reminiscing about the last 50 years of LSI's history, and so excited to have Dmitry Needlebeek with us today. Dmitry and I have known each other going on 25 years at least, and not only has he been a great friend and a client for many years with different companies, but he's also really an exceptional business development executive and someone I really admire. And we've worked some great campaigns over the last 30 years of my career. So Dmitry, thanks for being with me this morning. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. We've been talking about this internally for months now, and I'm glad that this is finally here. So thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It's quite an honor to be here today with you. Congratulations, first of all, to you, to your family, the 50 years. I'm hoping for at least 50 more.
Yes.
We can continue the good times. And looking forward to participating in this and sharing some fun memories.
Absolutely. Well, Dmitry, but before we start, why don't you just talk about your background and your career? You've really got a storied career that you and I have followed each other to a lot of different companies, and maybe just talk about how you started and a bit about your career and your role in a lot of different organizations as a business development executive.
I guess I would start out, really the reason I got into aerospace was just love of travel. So my mom and dad are first generation European, and I grew up speaking Greek at home and learning English when I went to school, and also heard a little bit of Dutch and German, from primarily Dutch from my dad, but he didn't speak that much. But as we went through school, I learned a lot of languages from my parents, and we did have a unique childhood, getting to Europe every other year and spending between 2 and 3 months at a time in Europe, a little bit in the northern part with a focus in Holland, a little bit Germany and Switzerland, and then spending at least 2 months in Greece. So I could really keep that whole Greek up, and it gave me this attitude and maybe a vision of different cultures and how that all works. And that got molded in, Sean, actually from, I want to say from when I was 10 to 14 years old. I lived in Australia for a number of years. And at that time, got to see the kind of the laid back Aussie attitude, if you will, but also the can-do attitude with these guys. And so if you go back and you kind of self-reflect, you see these little gems in your childhood and as you're going to school. And if you can put those together, I was talking to Lauren just a minute ago, and it comes down to attitude. And everybody in the different culture, wherever you are, I think the majority of the people really want to do well, and they want to do good things, and they're excited about what they do. But you do have problems, and you do have issues you have to confront. And if you have the attitude that it's not your problem or my problem, but it's our problem, and we can work on that together, I feel like that is where the cultural walls come down, whether it's just here with business in the US or globally. And that's the exciting thing for me. I think when we first started working together, we were really more focused on, let's see, a state to state or a US government internal market. And now we've become a global market. And the beauty, I think, of our relationship has grown on the business side to expand to a global business, right? And I reflect back on a little bit of the past. So I can remember going back to some of the international shows and seeing your dad there.
Yeah,
right. And meeting up with your dad and talking to him, and just like, oh my gosh, how lucky are we that we not only live in a beautiful state of Utah, but how lucky can we be and work together on multiple programs and be here wherever the case may be, different places around the world, and then see what he started and have your attitude come in and pick it up and start growing the business and interfacing with different people. And I think you and I talked, gosh, I want to say one of the first meetings, it's relationships, right? And people
Right.
want to tell their story, but people also, they want to work with you if you have a good attitude. And if you could listen and be empathetic, I think the empathy and the attitude is really what drives things, right? And one of the things, Sean, that I really want to emphasize to the listeners today is daily values, right? I have a little sign on my screen that I look at, 4 key daily values. One of them is respect, right? That's to me the first one. And very first thing you and I did together was not only a business relationship, but was respect for the men and women in uniform and what we're doing to get the warfighter ready and available to protect our home country each and every day, right? That's the first
Exactly.
part, right? The second part is appreciation. I don't feel like, I feel like there's too much that people do that is underappreciated. So we go around and just say thank you to somebody or be appreciative, right? And give them a smile. And that's amazing how far that will go. And that falls into caring and empathy. That's the third one I'd like to talk about. I feel like just the way you approach the business and your team approaches the business, it's not just about the business, but it's what we do outside the business and being caring and empathetic adults and trying to give back to the community. And finally, praising, right? You praise the people who do well. And even if somebody doesn't do well, it's okay. Maybe they didn't have all the tools that they needed, but you still praise them for what they do. And I think if you can have some foundational values like that, that really transcends culture, it transcends people, and it helps you become a better person yourself with the winning attitude and the drive to succeed.
That is fantastic. And you're exactly right. All of those values are core values of our team. And I think that's why this relationship has been so enduring for decades between us. And I'm so glad you shared that, Dimitri. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is really one of your strengths, and this is difficult, moving into a global mindset where you are so good at understanding the culture and the customer set, no matter where they're located. There's no question it helped with your background and in growing up in Europe and being exposed to a lot of different cultures at a young age. Do you want to talk about how you approach business development working across borders? Because there's not a lot of people that can do this. It is a real skill.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, Sean. I think fundamentally people, as I said, want to do good, but they're bound within, let's say, their limitations, what their culture will be accepted of them. But if you don't make any sort of project that you're working on, if you don't make it about you, you develop trust. And that comes by repetitive. You see the same people over and over and over. And when you meet somebody for the first time and then you follow up with them, it can be something as simple as a quick email or a phone call and said, hey, I really enjoyed meeting with you today. And, I'm really looking forward to working on this project. It can be very little things, I believe, Sean, that go that extra mile. And I don't feel like many people take that 1 or 2 minutes to make that extra effort. And if you look at, your credibility or your reliability as a person, if you don't put yourself at the bottom of the equation, your trust is never going to be there. If you don't make it about you, but you really listen to what they want and try to find a solution with them, you can cross cultures and be sensitive to them because then they know it's not about you. Right. And when you do that, they become a more active listener. So there's hearing and listening. And it's one thing to hear somebody, it's another thing to listen to somebody. At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is make sure their voice is heard, you understand where they're coming from, and you find a creative solution together. And that is not about you. And I think too many people, at least from my perspective on the BD side, is like, what's in it for me? When do I get the PO? Blah, blah, blah. And I don't look at it that way at all. I look at it more about how are we going to grow this relationship? How are we, this project we're working on was a way to get the realization that guess what? We get to work together.
Yeah, that's right.
This project was there for us to get introduced and to be able to have the opportunity to do stuff together. If you look at it from that perspective, it's a whole different way rather than, okay, we're working on this project. We have this deadline. We got to do this, blah, 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 right? Whereas, oh, wow, I get to work on this project, but better still, I get to work with Sean on this project. That's a whole different mentality.
Yeah.
And I get to work with these people, and I'm excited about working with these people as opposed to, oh man, I got to go work on this project and I don't like these people. And it's like, so I think a lot of it's how you approach it. And I think culturally, you'll find, even if you make just a little bit of an effort, whether it's trying to say something in somebody's language, trying to do something nice for somebody, little things make such a difference. And I think that's the key, Sean.
Where did your business development career start, Dimitri? I know you and I started working together early in both of our careers, but yeah, I think you had been working for a few companies prior to us connecting. Was the first time we connected at Lucas? Is that?
Yes.
Okay,
So that's right. So, I finished school, university, and I graduated in mechanical engineering. So I did a lot of structural analysis and primary structure, worked on the rocket programs and then aircraft structure. And then I would say it's been over 20 years that I kind of started putting some of the engineering to working out on the shop floor with people and developing kind of a rapport with the manufacturing world, and then kind of graduating that from field service engineering into sales to try to get the people who are having the problems, listen to their problems, but understand what the engineering was behind it, and then why these guys couldn't maintain something or why things weren't working, and come up with maybe solutions that these guys came up with. They have really, really good ideas, and a lot of times nobody wants to hear them because they think the engineers think they know better. And again, it's the way I approach things. And when I went into this kind of sales role was probably 25 years ago. So it was Lucas at the time up in Park City.
That's right.
Right. And that was actually was Lucas Western from the old Western Gear days.
Lucas Western, that's right.
And then it became the Rolls-Royce facility. And then that name changed to Triumph, and we were Triumph, and that facility still is a Triumph facility.
Right.
So, multiple different name changes, and then from there, because I'd worked on the F-18 program globally, where I was fortunate enough to work with some of the FMS users on the F-18, and there were 3 countries that fly the F-18 in Europe. So I took the trip to Europe to meet some of these people years and years before I even met you. And that's how I got kind of connected with the Swiss guys. And then I started working for the Swiss company coming on 15 years ago. So,
oh my goodness,
we've been together through multiple, as you said, multiple company names, and then across cultures like Finland and Spain are F-18 flyers, right? And
right.
You couldn't be more polarly opposite in the northern part of Europe as opposed to the southern part of Europe. And when you understand where those people are and they live and breathe and do things completely differently, just accepting that, don't try to make it the way you think it should be and the way we're brought up it should be. Accept that the fact that they're different and they probably have really good ideas, and work with them and talk. It's amazing to go out to the floor in these different countries. Sometimes language is not a barrier, even though you don't speak it. People still point, people can still smile, people can still look at pictures, and that nonverbal communication breaks down walls. It's amazing, absolutely amazing how that works.
I think it was you that told me early in my career, if you can say please and thank you in whatever language, that's a good start. And it's a philosophy that you have carried into your business development strategy of respect, appreciation. And I think about that a lot. I was recently in Iceland, and I don't speak Icelandic. Not a lot of people do, but learning please and thank you. And I was thinking about that advice that had given me all those years ago. Just learn please and thank you as a start, and the rest of it will come together. And that was great advice. Dimitri, so remember you brought up a memory that I had of you as well a long time ago. Remember when that organization that it transitioned into several different companies. It really went from a medium size to a huge, large global entity. And we had been working a campaign. I mean, talk about that time, because you were so good at translating the overall strategy and incorporating it into a larger vision that that had changed and then changed again. And I see that happening with so many companies now in this era of consolidation and mergers. Could you talk about that? There's a lot of business development executives, a lot of our clients are really struggling with that, where they build a strategy, they're acquired or they merge into another organization within the same company. And one of the things you've done so well, and you're really great at this, is being flexible and adapting to a changing environment.
Yeah, so thank you, Sean. That's very nice. I guess I would tell you, we talked a little bit. I'm reflecting back. I took this kind of a master's course in Switzerland that was in English. And one of the things they taught me, and if I think about that and look back to this time, we're going from like 200 people to 20,000 people in this
Right, exactly.
multiple, these multinational corporations. It's kind of this perspective or management leadership skill, which is when somebody asks you something, you can say yes and there's other people say no, right off the bat. It's like, no, but you can't do that. And if you say yes and yeah, let's talk about that. I think it goes back to what you very first said. It's the please and thank you and yes. I mean, let's get to yes, right? To me, it's in your DNA. Look at your taglines and look at your email address. LSI wins. Okay, that's yes. That's what people want to get to, right? How do we find yes faster? And you do that when you look at what's obvious to me and you. It's not obvious to everybody. So we take a step back and we try to understand where these people are, and we're very transparent in our communication. And I don't want it to make it sound too trite, but it's quite simple. If you listen to the voice of the customer and you say, yeah, that, we could do it that way, or yeah, that's a really good idea. And instead of saying, no, the problem with that is, and you can't do that, right? It's yes, and as opposed to no, but. And I think another really, really positive thing is celebrating little successes, Sean. Okay.
Absolutely.
If you're in a multicultural, massive organization, you guys can get a win, and some of these other organizations don't even know about it. And I saw some things at Rolls-Royce that there was just so many people, and not that many people knew what the other division was doing. And then we went to Triumph, which was a little bit smaller, but we'd get together with some of the Triumph guys, and every single one of them essentially said, yes, how can I help you? And it was more about helping your colleague and their potential customer. And I think that's one of the things for me that makes me come back to you guys is, how do I help you? Because I know you guys are going to help me, right?
Yeah,
and that's
great.
the yes. And this goes back to what I told you before. This is how this is how Catherine and I are going to work together, and we're going to win, and it's going to be fun. But I'm not sure about the project. I just know I get to work with you guys. And that's what's really fun, right? And that's how you become successful.
It has been fun. It really has. So let me ask you this. So you early in your business development career, a lot of your focus was working with a company marketing and building campaigns within the US. It switched to building campaigns globally. And now you've got this combination of global focus and US. And I mean, talk about that a bit. Like I said earlier, this is really a skill set that most business development executives, as you know, you may be the international guy, right? Or you may be the internal guy or whatever. But talk about how you approach these campaigns now. And I think what's so incredible about your skill set is that you can switch back and forth from saying we're going to create a big domestic campaign, we're going to create an international campaign. Does that even come up to you anymore? Because that is in a lot of organizations just unheard of. There's usually an international department, a domestic department. Do you even think about that, Dimitri?
Yeah, so thanks. It's interesting, Sean, you bring that up because so working with Rolls-Royce, we went from essentially doing stuff CONUS, primarily focused here in the States, to now to Rolls-Royce that started looking at the English parent company, but then kind of moving off into other areas and then graduating and working for the Swiss company. And, 1 year I was in the international group. So we didn't look at this international business really any differently. What we did is cultural sensitivity.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And so the way we approach things and that evolves. But I think what learned over time is that 1 year we would be in Singapore at the Singapore Air Show or down in Malaysia and Australia. And the next year we would be at the Paris Air Show or we would be at the Farnborough Air Show. So we would be at essentially the Southeast. We'd be in Australia, we'd be in Europe, we'd be in the States. And when you go into these strategic meetings, I think you analyze the business for that specific country's need. And you look at that from where is that country today? Where are they going to go? And how can, as I said, how can we get to yes with that country? And then, to be honest, it's keeping things really, really simple, Sean. We can get so caught up in making things complex. And what is proven to be very, very successful is start out very simple, right? It's to your example of going to Iceland, start out with simple, yes, hello, please, thank you, how are you? And then take it just a little bit at a time. The strategy as a business developer doesn't change for me internationally. I'm more sensitive to the culture and I'm more sensitive to the person on the other end of the table. And we haven't, so I'm going to tie this in for you, Sean, with COVID. We didn't have the opportunity to see each other and or our work colleagues. And as I tell my wife, it's my extended family, right? All these people that you deal with outside and all your different LSI locations, they're your extended family. Those are reflections of you, right? The people in your company are a directly reflection of you. So It's really good for your soul. It's good for you as a person to actually see that other person. And we were robbed of that opportunity for 18 months. And so the first time we have to actually get together to see each other, it kind of threw my management a curveball, but I said, I will get nothing out of this trip except warm my soul to see every single person that's there and give them a hug and say, thank you. I'm so happy to see you again. And that was really strange for a lot of people to accept the fact that we weren't there to achieve a business goal. And I said, we are achieving a business goal. We're achieving the fact that we get to see people. And they're the key that will unlock that business potential that we have. Right. So again, it comes back to the approach is different, Sean. I think what you learn with international companies is sometimes we're too driven by, hey, we got to do this and that to finish this project, as opposed to I can get there really a lot faster by getting the right people in the room and getting them all energized. I mean, the momentum and the power of having all those people on your boat row in the same direction instead of fighting each other, it's phenomenal. And it's not that hard if you can be nice and recognize them.
Absolutely. Early in my career, this was one of the first engagements that I worked was MBB. We met the Messerschmitt based in Munich, and we were working a huge campaign with the U.S. federal government. A lot of my foreign international work started the other way. How do we work with these foreign entities to market their products and services within the US? That's really where I started. And I had never been on a plane before I had started with the company. And so I was going into Munich, and you can imagine 30 years ago, you had spent some time in Munich as well, as we've talked about. 30 years ago, it was very different than it is now. And I had to adjust to that sensitivity, being customer focused, a language barrier. At that time, we were working with a lot of individuals who their English was terrible. they had learned English and to get by so that they could do work in the US, but it was a very different time, and it taught me a lot as well. This entity now is Airbus, as you know, but you're exactly right. I think it really is being customer focused, looking at what the customer's needs are, and that relationship, which is so key. It's what we really talk about in our capture discipline, is that it all starts with the relationship. If you don't have that foundational relationship that you can build from, they're not going to tell you what's wrong. They're not going to give you the opportunity to listen to what their requirements are, listen to what their frustrations and challenges are if you don't start with that relationship. So, Dimitri, 15, I cannot believe you've been in your current role and you've done a lot of different things in that 15 years, but I cannot believe it's been 15 years. That is just incredible. Talk about moving into a very different role than you had been in. And I think you were given a lot of responsibility for different divisions, commodities. How did you transition into this role 15 years ago?
Yeah, so interesting. Thanks, Sean. If you think about it, everybody's in our comfort zone, and it's hard to break out of that comfort zone. And yet I had the opportunity to work for the Swiss company, and I jumped at the chance, and it went from kind of focusing without the daily values that we discussed, taking that focus into a multi-global position and having the responsibility of all the United States and Canada, and just kind of saying, okay, how do you navigate through all this? And it's a learning experience, but I think it's also looking at the location, what they want to do, and then to manage that. So one of the things, I'm going to give you an example, and it'll kind of bring the point home. The next time you have one of your standard meetings, whether it's a monthly meeting, whatever it might be, a management meeting, one of the things I do, and even though I might not be the one leading the meeting, is first meeting, everybody kind of sits where they want to sit. This is human nature. This is their comfort zone. The next meeting, they don't get to sit in that exact spot. Okay, if you're doing it over the phone, that's different. But when you're sitting down in a room together, you force people to move to a different spot. Okay, and you can do this a lot if you're at a conference and you just put the name tags of where people sit, and they're just assigned a different seat every day. And by the third or fourth time you shift them around, they're forced to talk to the person next to them that's not the same person that was next to them before. And all of a sudden, you've got this cross communication happened in 2 or 3 meetings that never would have happened unless you forced them to get out of their comfort zone. So I approached this whole challenge by getting out of my comfort zone and looking at what did it take to be successful in this multi-global, multi-country assignment. And it really put me into a constant every day. How did I manage that change? And I managed that change by asking the people in their specific team or in that project to do something different. I didn't get them to say, okay, today we're going to do this. I said, okay, today is Saturday. We're going to go out and do something fun. And tomorrow we can look at that. And that throws everybody a curveball, right? But it's the attitude, and that develops trust. And then the next day they came back, they're like, okay, well, we did this activity. And I said, now you're going to move over there. And they're going to like, I don't want to sit there. I want to sit over here by all my friends. And I said, well, you're going to sit over here. And so as you challenge people, people can do amazing things if they're motivated correctly, if you challenge them and you smile.
That's right.
That goes such a long way. And so I started seeing a couple little results, and I was like, I never expected this to happen. So then I challenged myself, but I challenged some of the other team members and on these projects, because they all in their own mind, we're the referees, we know better than when the refs, when they make a bad call, we're the experts, right? But we're not really the experts until we get the strength of all the people behind us. And that was something I saw very early on, and it helped me navigate going from kind of just doing BD for maybe Tinker and Warner Robins and a little bit at Hilt, and now recognizing, oh my gosh, I've got Navy facilities to go to. I've got Army facilities to go to, right? They all speak the same language, but they speak it differently. Their processes are plus minus the same. The intent is the same, but they approach it in a totally different way. And so that's language, that's culture, just that we have in the United States. But that attitude and a smile and, kind of helping them goes such a long way. And that's, I think, what helped me really turn the corner and look at things differently, Sean.
I love that. We've talked about the foundation of capture being the relationship. You have worked some really big campaigns during your career, and in the last 15 years, we've worked some campaigns together. When you're looking at a large opportunity, once you feel like you have a relationship with the customer, how do you approach a large campaign to start? I mean, I know that we talk about this all the time. The foundation it's got to be the relationship, but what else do you consider in that upfront strategy and building out a capture plan and then executing to that?
It's a really, really good question, Sean. And it's as you look at different campaigns, it can be very complex. It can be demanding globally from the different time zone perspective. And what's worked well and the lessons learned from the past, I would say, is cross-functional, and it's getting the different levels of management within the different organizations to know each other. So that's a start. I try to introduce CEOs to CEOs. I try to get senior VPs, but they also try to get some of the working level guys into these senior level management meetings, right? And say they're no different than us, and the working level guys are going to make the senior managers successful. So at least know who's back there. And then also, when you start going through these campaigns, there's scope change, there's creep, there's all kinds of curveballs that you have ahead of you. So the way you handle that, what's in your toolbox today, right? Which tool do you use today, which I didn't use yesterday because I didn't have this problem yesterday? And then, get the right people involved. So the people are the basis of helping solve the problems and getting that introduction at the right levels, and then cross introductions. I would say when you do a huge campaign, not everybody has to know everybody, but you have to have a couple of key guys, right? And I think the focal points, you have to make sure that there's accountability for various tasks, and you have to make sure there's somebody for a backup, because everybody should be able to have a vacation or a break and be able to do something. But they also should be able to know that I've got this, it's my responsibility, and I'm going to be accountable for this, and I got to see it through. And sometimes that's not so easy, and you have to guide the people along with that. But that's again, that's people management. And that's where I throw them a curveball and say, okay, you're out of your comfort zone today. We're going to go off and do this. Right. And it's kind of fun. And I think humor goes such a long way in all that, Sean, because these
Absolutely.
big campaigns, they can just drag on and on and on. And they're, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And you have so many details you're looking at. So you give these people who have the ability, they don't know it, but you know it, and you have trust in their abilities, and you give them that chance to succeed. And when they start seeing a little bit of success, they want more of it, right? And they want to
Absolutely.
take on more of that responsibility. And then it's kind of, as you become an effective leader, I believe you kind of step back and you give them more of that responsibility and watch them grow. And you can manage that, right? You have to kind of push them here and tweak them there a little bit, but as you see them grow, they become believers,
That's
and
right.
it's much easier for you to execute on that strategy. But you have to be flexible. You mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Flexibility has got to be a big key, and you build in that flexibility with these people, and you build in that flexibility to say it's okay to challenge somebody, and guess what? It's okay to say no, and it's okay for us to fail on something. You won't be punished, right? That's that carrying the empathy and the praise. You won't be punished if you make a mistake.
I love it.
And, right. And so when you do that and these people start succeeding and they know that they can make a mistake and they're going to be appreciated for whatever effort they've made, these larger campaigns become a little bit more manageable. So
Absolutely.
it's tough though. It's not the easiest thing.
You're one of the capture executives that I really admire. And I think it's because of your approach with the customer, looking at how the customer thinks, developing this relationship it's a pure relationship that is the foundation of your business development strategy and approach. But one of the other things that you do so well is transitioning from capture to proposal. And again, this is a skill set in my 30-year career that I have seen very few business development executives that can transition immediately from capture into the proposal phase. And you've done some incredible proposals in your career, I think that some of these proposals that you've won and we've worked together over the years have been remarkable. How do you transition into proposal? How do you stop thinking about, okay, we've done everything we can to shape the requirement to develop through our relationships this trust, this mutual understanding of capabilities on both sides and expectations. How do you then transition to thinking about building, especially a complex proposal?
So that's a very good question, Sean. And that is the challenge there to me is it's a different skill set. And so it requires different people with different skill sets. And you get from that capture phase that say, okay, the bid manager, I've probably involved him a month or two before he or she needs to be involved, just at the kind of a periphery level. And then as things get closer, they don't get hit with something cold turkey. So it's that simple communication well before the fact that it may happen. And it's not wasting people's time as much as it is just a basic education. I think Lauren mentioned earlier when you were getting the computer changed out, it never hurts to learn. It never hurts for somebody to be aware of something else that's going on. And it's difficult to say, okay, this clock stops and this clock starts. So again, that transition is bringing the right people in. That is the evaluation of the strength of that individual team, right? And you have to make sure if you're the only executive or a small group of people and you've got to transition to a huge group of people, you find the right 2 or 3 go get them type guys in that organization and you get them involved early on. And as I said, you plant the seed and you've got to nurture it a little bit because that capture It's a lot of work, but you can't shortchange the proposal guys, and they don't know what you know. And so you have to kind of get them involved early on and then show them where the success is, right? Show them how they can win. And how do I find yes together? And when they see that, and then you give them a little bit, it's the same thing. Then the transition starts taking on a life of its own, and these guys get involved as a team, and they're saying, okay, we're working on this proposal that actually is going to do something, and this is what it's going to do, and you try to make it tangible, and that tangible feeling is pictures. If you can, you try to take them somewhere where there's something similar that they can see. You involve multiple senses. You just don't drop something off on somebody's desk, but you try to give them multiple different ways to look at things, and all of a sudden it's real, right? It's not just another project you're working on, but hey, this is what the airplane looks like. This is what we're going to do. And this is what this actuator is going to do, or this landing gear is going to do, and how we're going to change things. And oh, by the way, we just incorporated this nanotechnology that nobody else is doing, and we're making this gizmo do something that nobody's ever done on this before, but we can do it because we've got the confidence and the people to do it. And they're like, oh wow, we can be on the cutting edge, right? So you build that excitement in them, and then that's the maybe the easiest way to explain that is internal focus versus external focus, right? How you get your internal team up and excited to the same level of excitement that you have the externals excited. It's not the easiest skill. Let's just say that.
It's not. And you do it so well. And something that you had mentioned early on is I've really admired with you over the years. It doesn't matter if you're in that capture phase or proposal phase or execution, you always approach every phase with a winning attitude, and you know that you're going to win. And you're so good at also saying, we can't win this, and we're not going to. We've done some campaigns together that we were far into the campaign, and you pulled the plug because you just knew we couldn't win. And I really have admired that about you. You are about winning, and it permeates everything that you do. All in, no matter what the phase is, no matter if it's here's an idea, we're moving into the proposal phase, we've won, and now we're going to execute. It's remarkable.
I think, Sean, thank you for saying that. I think you have to be optimistic, and you have to want to win, but then you do that self-reflection, and you also have to go back and take stock and say what is good for the customer, and if the customer is going to benefit from what we're doing, great. And if the customer is looking for something else, or there may be another competitor, or even probably the biggest thing is, do I have the resources and the bandwidth to win with this customer and show this customer that we can continue to win, vice not doing that at all and saying, yeah, we maybe can do this and we'll figure it out afterwards. That's not being fair. And I think if you can't be true to yourself, you can't be true to the customer, and you can't give them that service that you would like to have if you were the one receiving it. It's again listening to the customer, voice the customer, but also saying we're not in a position where we can do this the way the customer wants us to do it. We would have to do some things differently. Can we reshape that scope? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, that's okay. We've learned something. And we've learned that it's okay to say no. And what the biggest benefit I would say from that, Sean, is that yields more business. Even though you can say, okay, I won, and that's great. But when you pull the plug and you say, no, that's not good, people will say, oh my gosh, you didn't try to snow me on this. You just
Right.
You were realistic about this. And I appreciate the fact that you're being honest about it, and you weren't going to lie to me. And that comes down to you as a person and your integrity and who you are in the industry. And I think about that actually quite a lot every day. You're only as good as your last success or your last failure. And people will remember some of the gotcha moments, but it's again the approach you take to those, and they'll come back because they'll want somebody that they can work with, that they'll trust, rather than saying, okay, this guy was just doing it to get the PO. He didn't do it because it was the right thing to do.
Dimitri, one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot, and a lot of our relationship has centered around this, and I think it, in following this vein of integrity, and that is executing. Once you win, you are so concerned about ensuring that you deliver on the promise that was made during that win. And most business, I know this is not in your DNA, but most business development executives, again, they are thinking about, okay, I won, I'm going on to my next campaign. I'm gonna focus on that next win. But one of the things that you talk to your team about is that the past performance is so critical to our business development. And you have, even when there's been some real challenges in executing over the years, we've seen some tough conditions where the customer's expectations changed, their budget changed, the program changed, and you, as a senior business development lead, have been in the middle of that, ensuring that no matter what it is, you're going to work through that. And I don't see that with a lot of our clients, where it's all about the win. It's all about just getting the win in, getting the booking, making the quarterly numbers, and going on to the next win. And you are so concerned about the delivery once that win has occurred. And that's one of the other things that I've always admired you in your integrity. I mean, talk about that. Talk about how, as a business development lead, you continue to be involved in the program once the win has happened.
Yeah, Sean, that's transition is something where you're always in a position to learn, right? And I think if you look at any sort of win, I want to use an example where at a previous company, I won in a competition against quite a few other people, and the contracting officer said, "Hey, you guys won this bid," and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! That's great news. When can I come see you?" And he said, "Well, why do you want to come see me?" And I said, "I want to learn what I can do better." He goes, "Well, why do you want to do better? You've already won." And I said, "Well, I want to figure out where I was short on the proposal and what I can do better next time. And then I want to see how this success will help you." So I didn't make the win about me, right? So I made the win about the person who was on the contracting side, and I made the win about the customer. And then if you have that empathy for the person on the other end of the phone that said, "Hey, you guys won something," again, it was a follow-up 3 months or 6 months later to that person, and just say, "Now, I know we haven't done anything for a while, just want to see what you're up to." You never know, that person can wind up helping you in the future. But it goes back to the fundamental foundation of just being friendly, being kind, having a good attitude towards the person who you were working with. When, I take that long-term view, I'm happy to have a short-term success. Everybody is, but for me, it's a much longer-term view. If I can have success with that person now, I want to have success with that person in the future. And that approach is not just that number and that win, it's celebrating it. Okay, that's great. But also, it's being a real person to that person, saying thank you, and then following up, telling them you're appreciative, tell them you're respectful of everything that they've done and they've had to go through. It's again, too many people just say, "Okay, thanks," and they thanks for saying that, but then they don't take the time to go back and praise that individual, because that individual probably went through more than an 8-hour day at some time during the process, or months during the process, that had to put in a lot of hours and as part of the decision making team. And whether it's a failure or it's a success, you still can go back to that person. They're the ones that help you. And that at the end of the day, we talked about it before, it's a people business, and saying, hey, what can I do to make your life better today? How can we grow? What's your next project you're working on? Show some interest in what they're doing, right? Care for that individual. They want to talk about what's kind of going on in their life, right? Let them talk about it and be excited for them, and be a sympathetic ear. Sometimes I've had some of them call me and they're like, well, I'm just kind of having a crappy day. And I'm like, okay, I've got a couple jokes to tell you. They'll make your day a little better, right? I'm here to put a smile on your face today. And that it's amazing, Sean, how that transcends whatever you're doing in that given moment. So just remember, there's the people who are doing this. There's people to help you. There's people who are serving you. Be respectful to those people every single day.
Great. It's really great advice. Let me ask you this. One of the things that we see with a lot of our clients, and we work with about 400 active clients at any one time, and so we see a lot of organizations, large and small, a lot of different types of business development styles. But two things that I wanted you to comment on. One is we see a lot of churn in these business development organizations. As you know, it's not uncommon for a business development lead to turn over about every 18 months. And you have had this incredible longevity, I think, because of a lot of the things that you've talked about in this conversation that we've had. I'd like for you to talk about a couple of things. One is that oftentimes business development leads will win a large multi-billion dollar contract and then transition. You've seen this a lot, transition into a program role. And I know you've had that opportunity many times in winning the program, but you have resisted that offer or invitation to go lead the program, and you have remained in a career business development role. It is rare that we see that. Do you want to talk about your longevity and how you have dedicated your career to business development?
Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out, Sean. It's to me, you've developed that relationship from the start, right? Even getting to understand the project and then getting into the capture phase and going through it all. But I believe there's an opportunity to grow, even though that project is going on. I still will stop in and find out what's going on. I haven't left that person or that client, and they're going to have a different team of people that comes in. So you have to kind of be there for the transition for them. But at the same time, there's other opportunities. And so I think it's this striving to make sure I'm relevant. It's trying to stay up with technology. And then it's also to go back, see where people are at, not have to be just in that program, but to keep yourself relevant, and then have that opportunity to meet more people. It's a drive to meet more people, more so than that one individual project. And there will be other projects that come along. I can think of some landing gear stuff we've done. I think of this Dornier 228 program that that we've done together, and there's so many chances to sit back and say, okay, I want to get involved with that. And I'm still involved with a couple of the guys from various programs. Even after the programs have been going on for a couple of years, I'll go back to them. And I think it's the fact that I've gone back to them. They know that I've still got a little bit of say and I've got some skin in the game. And that's that comfort level, right? When you buy a car, you buy a house, you trust somebody that you've been around multiple times, and that person's integrity goes a long way. So you don't have to go from my perspective, I don't have to lead that program. I just have to touch base with the people every now and then. They know who that you are as an individual. You have that integrity. You have your name out there, and there will be problems. And a lot of times I'll come back and I'll help them, and they'll say, "Oh no, I can't believe it. We've got all these problems." I'm like, "Hey, this is an opportunity. Don't look at it so bad. Let's see how we can grow on this." And so instead of getting stuck in those details, there's guys who are really, really good program managers and things like that. And I let those guys shine in that area, give them the opportunity, because I just enjoy being around the people, enjoy doing part of the travel and seeing something new, learning something new, taking the time to make sure we as a company stay relevant, we stay technology advanced, and we don't take a step back. We can learn from things in the past, but also let's see what we can do better tomorrow.
That's fantastic and great advice. I recently met with a client, an executive at a Fortune 500 company, and he's a young executive. And he said, I cannot believe that you've done this for 30 years. He said, it's so painful. It's so stressful. If I don't make my numbers, I'm always worried about, am I going to be fired? And that's the wrong approach. My advice to him was, hey, this can be a lot of fun. This career path could be really fun. And so I think it's a special individual that recognizes and dedicates his or her career to this science of business development, because there is a churn. There is a lot of individuals that think, oh, that I could get into this, and then two years later, they're either been let go, or they're looking for something else, or they'll jump at a chance to take a program role. So I think it's a discipline. It's a mindset. It's about winning, and it is a special individual that can do this. And I'm telling you, you have exemplified this discipline of business development for so long, and it's remarkable.
Well, thank you so much, Sean. I'm going to throw you a little curveball here, but I think you'll appreciate it.
Okay.
And that is food. And this is kind of strange,
agree.
Right? And this is kind of strange because people don't appreciate this. And as soon as I saw your reaction, exactly. Food is it can be culture. It can be so many different things. And I think you have been extremely intelligent. You've got your own place. You can, you can do so much with that. And we can sit in offices all day long, right? And yet we can go out and we can have a meal together. And the thing is, you're more relaxed. You're not in a work environment. And, you can talk about your families. And then the person on the other end of the table, or the guy sitting across from you, that lady, that gentleman, is now all of a sudden you've become a real person. It's not just, you're sitting there in an office trying to do something. And I think food is I think some people, to your point earlier, some BD guys are like, yeah, we're going to go out food. We're going to go and get a steak. We're going to live it up, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it's like, oh no, we're going to do this. And then we're going to have some of this. And then we're going to try this kind of food. And I think that side of things, it's almost like what used to be when we started out, everybody wanted to go golfing, right? And everybody wanted to do this or that. You shouldn't underemphasize the fact you can go out and just let these other people know that, hey, we can go do something and we can have some food together. And that's such a big success criteria, I think. Be friendly, right? Go out, try something new. And you're like, man, I remember we went, and just like I said earlier, I went with Catherine and had sushi in the middle of Steak Country, USA, right? And people will kind of look at us. But I look back on that and I think, hey, that put us both out of our comfort zone, and it was fun, right? And
Absolutely.
so that's how you separate yourself, and you separate that individual and the people within LSI. I think they're all at the way you hire, the way you promote these guys, and you nurture them. For me, that is so critical. Food is just the example. You can do so much and be so productive with people, but to get something a little bit extra out of somebody, it doesn't take that much effort. You don't have to shower them with tons of money and tons of other stuff. Just simple praise, you know. Hey, that was a great job. Let's go get a burger. They're like, what? You want to go have a burger with me? I think I told you the one time. I give you this last example. You and maybe you'll remember this. I had my CEO, assistant, the vice president of aerospace in Switzerland. He flew out just for a 24-hour meeting, and I was meeting with a 4-star Air Force general,
I remember.
and we flew in, and I picked this guy up at the airport, and my president just asked me all these questions. What's the customer going to say this? I'm going to ask him these 10 questions. So you're going to answer them right now. So I answered him right then and there. And he says, I want to see how well you know the customer. And we sat down in the meeting with the 4-star, and we went through all the things, and he basically answered them the way I thought he would. And after the meeting was over, the president looked at me and said, that was a test. And I said, well, why did you want to test me? And he said, I want to know how well you know your customer. And I said, well, all this time I've shared all this information with you. And he said, let's go grab a burger. Just like that. It's just like, okay, you've done all this stuff. Now that we're going to celebrate. And it didn't have to be anything big. It was just, let's go grab a burger somewhere. So it's amazing. I'll never forget having this stress about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And how am I going to handle this situation? And what's he going to say? And did I say the wrong thing? Blah, blah, blah. Right. But then everything was good. There are some things, and that's where you have to be flexible. Some things that come up, and as you said before, budgets change, things change. If you can show that flexibility, then roll with those changes and embrace the fact that change is constant. Just don't hang your hat and say, well, you said on this date that this is what we're going to do. That's not life, right? Just be flexible and realize that different people, you don't know. That's probably the one thing I think also about. You don't know what's going on with that other person and whatever circumstances they had that given day. They may have heard some great news. They may have heard somebody in their family had cancer. You just don't know.
That's
So
right.
don't put unreasonable expectations on people, and take a minute to be empathetic for whatever situation they might be going through. And it's some basic, simple principles, but they go such a long way, Sean.
I agree. I have learned more having a meal with my clients over the years than all the time in a boardroom with them. It is you and I share that, and that that's something that a lot of these young business development executives that are entering into this phase, they don't understand. They would never go out to dinner with their customer and or have a meal with them. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because you will learn so much. It is a skill. It is sitting down with your customer and really trying to understand his or her challenges, the requirements and metrics that they have to perform against. It will give you insight to opportunities and help you forge requirements. It'll help you'll get good at educating your customer on your capabilities, your company's capabilities, and establishing this trust. And I really appreciate you saying that, Dimitri, because it has become a lost element of business development. I think in this, as a lot of the career business development executives have retired or are looking to move into a program role, that's great advice for some of these young executives that are trying to be successful in this very demanding but fun discipline of business development. So thank
Yeah,
you for
and
saying that.
And you get to know them, right, Sean? You just
Right.
like you said, you get to know somebody kind of from a business end in the boardroom, but then when you're out having dinner or having a lunch together, you get to know them maybe on a little bit more of a personal level. And so there's certain things that you can relate to. And what you're doing is, and for the younger guys, I think the message is you're learning to find common ground,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And that's the foundation that you start building everything upon. And
And
you
you're not going to do that with a text message.
exactly. And you're not going to do that sitting there going through PowerPoint slides,
No,
right?
that's right. Exactly.
So that's why I said I'm going to throw you a curve, but I think it's so important.
Not at all. I loved it. I thought it is so relevant, and I see a lot of our clients that we're working with and advising, they get into this business development role, and that's the last thing on their list is I'm going to sit down with my customer over a meal and talk about, you may not talk about business at all. It may be just talking about their family or their interests or whatever it is.
Yeah, and they have something on their mind at that given point, right? And
Right.
let them talk and share, and and then have a couple of laughs, and then they'll say, okay, well that wasn't painful, right? That was kind of fun, and maybe I'll do that again. And then when you see that again and again and again, that integrity starts to happen, and then that trust equation gets a little better, and then things just kind of move a little easier going forward. And you need that because there will be problems, and you need to talk to each other about stuff. And it's having that adult conversation and not beating around the bush and just saying, hey, there's a problem, okay, let's face the problem,
That's
right?
right. And
So
it's tough to do that by text message. And so I really appreciate you saying that. Dimitri, this has been amazing. It's been fun reminiscing about our early days together and working some of the big campaigns and some of the successes. And I just, I want you to know how much I appreciate our partnership over the last 25 or 30 years that we've worked together. Is there any particular memory as we celebrate our 50th anniversary? Is there any particular memory that you have of working together? It could be anything, but I'd be interested in any memory that you may have at any point in our long relationship.
there would be two, Sean, and the first one would be, I'd say, from a few years ago, just a few months ago, the ability when we're see each other at a social event like TCG, when you guys hold that social, I
Yes.
will be one of the first ones to tell you to do that every single year. And there may not be a ton of people, but the impression that's made in a situation like that. The
Yes.
example I give you there would be I've been there with a couple times, different Swiss guys. This last time was two or three of us, and the previous time there were a few more. And, some of these guys are just floored that anybody here in the States, first of all, knows where Switzerland is, not Sweden, because that gets mixed up, and you see that. But then when we talk about your love of Switzerland and that you play the Alphorn, and people are just kind of what, right? So that's part of it, but that brings something that transcends borders. It's culture. It's something that they are comfortable with. It's something that they know, and it's something that you do, right? So there's a connection there. And if you don't talk, you're not going to talk about that in a boardroom. So
No.
that kind of example, I was in Switzerland last week, and talking to some of these guys, and said, "You just wait till Sean comes out. We're going to go, and we're going to have a great time one of these summer months, and we're going to be out there, and it's just going to be a real fun time." And all of these guys to a T said, "I don't care what I'm doing that day. We're going to go out. We're going to see this." Right. So it's so powerful. So I would say that. And then, Sean, I would say another memory is how a bad situation turned good. I want to say we were working on a project, and it just didn't look like
Right.
it was going to go anywhere. I want to say there was one, probably a really, really good example is with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on the AIM-9P missile. And that contracting is so difficult. And, the delays that we had and all kinds of things. And it just seemed like it was kind of dragging on. And I remember coming to you a couple times saying, you know what, we really need you guys to put a few more hours here on this time. And then other times saying, hey, it's not going where we need to go, but don't worry, it'll be okay. And you were very, very gracious and said, yep, don't worry about it. We got it. And it's just that I would say that example really stood out to me, that I could come to you with a problem that I didn't feel comfortable with because the customer was changing requirements on me. I knew we would win at the end. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't going to let go, and I wanted to win, but it was an uncomfortable situation.
That's right.
And I would say, Sean, I very, very much appreciated the opportunity that I could come talk to you about that. You were open to it. You were saying, don't worry about it, Dimitri. We'll get past it. And I very much appreciated that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. This has been so fun. I look forward to getting together. Let me know when you get back from Europe. I'd love to connect with you.
Yep. And again, my heartfelt congratulations to you, Catherine, your children, the whole team there. I can tell you the Bayat and I are trying to be consistent with you guys all this time. And we're already working on our next year proposals and what we can do and getting your task orders lined up. So it's not a problem to start at the first part of the year. We're going to start this time of this year. And I can tell you from the people in Switzerland, congratulations, very heartfelt congratulations from their side, but also it's a team. And these guys really wanted you to know that you and all the team here in the States have made an effort, and it's not unnoticeable. So thank you from their side.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thanks so much. If you're interested in learning more about this episode or LSI, you can find information in the episode notes. If you have an interest in marketing your products or services within the United States, please contact us. If you're interested in taking your product or service, you're in the US and you are interested in capture, proposal, program execution in foreign markets, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. If you have any needs regarding capture, proposal, or program execution, please contact us and we'll have somebody get back to you immediately. Thanks again, Dimitri, and I look forward to connecting with you when you return from Europe.
As do I. Thanks for the opportunity.